Hey guys, Algebra 1. Again, we are just reviewing what we've already done. We're graphing parabolas. So we're taking all the information that we already know and putting it onto the graph. Let's look at number 1. So it tells us to find our axis of symmetry, which is negative b. So we're going to put a negative 6 divided by 2. Negative 6 divided by 2 is equal to a negative 3. Now I'm going to take this negative 3 and I'm going to place it everywhere there's an x, so that I will have y is equal to negative 3 squared, because I've taken this negative 3, put it in for x, plus 6 times negative 3 plus 5. Now I have to solve for y. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to solve this for these numbers. Negative 3 squared, negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. 6 times a negative 3 is 18. 9 minus 18 is a negative 9 plus 5. 9 minus 18, negative 9 plus 5 is equal to a negative 4. So now it wants me to write this in vertex. It wants me to write the vertex. The vertex is always my first number, negative 3, and what we solved for, negative 4. I'm going to plot this on my graph. So negative 3, 1, 2, 3, negative 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is my vertex. It's either the highest or the lowest point of my parabola. Let's find out which it is. So I have to determine the direction of the parabola. Remember, the direction of the parabola is based on the number in front of my x squared. Since this is a positive number, then that means it's going to go up. So I know that my vertex, this is the lowest point. Now I have to determine the y-intercept of my parabola. Remember, y-intercept is always this constant. So my y-intercept is y is equal to 5. So I'm going to come here on my y-axis and go, here's my x-axis. I'm going up 5 from my x-axis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm putting a point there. That's my y-intercept. Now the last thing I have to do is find my roots. So I'm rewriting my parabola as 1x squared plus 6x plus 5, just so that it's in our frame. To find the roots, remember first I have to factor. So 1 times 5 is 5. So I'm looking for the numbers that multiply to 5 and add to 6. Well, 5 is a prime number, so it's only 1 and 5, and both of these are positive, so I'm just going to replace my 6 with a 1 and a 5, so that I will have 1x squared. Instead of the 6x, I will have a 1x plus 5x, and then my plus 5. Now this looks like something we've been doing since January, where I get to put parentheses around my first 2 terms and around my second 2 terms. I'm going to put the number of x's I have above it, just so that it's easy for me to see. So what's the highest number that goes into 1 and 1? That would be a 1. And then I have to look and see that I have an x that I can take out of both terms. So since I've dealt with both of those, I get to start my parentheses. 1 divided by 1 is 1. I had 2 x's. I took 1 away, so I only have 1 left. Plus 1 divided by 1 is a 1. I had 1x, I took it away, so I have no more x's. Because of this plus, I'm going to put a plus. What's the highest number that goes into 5 and 5? Remember, we're looking for the highest number, so that would be a 5. I don't have an x in both terms, so I can't take that out. So 5 divided by 5 is 1. I had an x, and I did not take it out. Plus 5 divided by 5 is another 1. Now, are my parentheses the same? I have a 1x plus 1 and a 1x plus 1, so they sure are. So I have 1x plus 1. This 1x plus 1 is being multiplied by a 1x. And this 1x plus 1 is being multiplied by 5. Now, I'm not quite done. I have to take each one of these factors and set it equal to 0. So I'm going to do that over here, where I have 1x plus 1 is equal to 0. I also have 1x plus 5 is equal to 0. So now I have to solve for x. So I'm going to subtract, because this is being added, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides, so that I have 1x is equal to a negative 1, or x is equal to a negative 1. Now remember, I have to write this so that we can graph it. So my x is negative 1 and my y is 0. Now, let's look at this one. I'm adding 5, so I have to subtract 5 from both sides, so that I have 1x is equal to negative 5, or x is equal to a negative 5. Remember, the 1 in front is assumed. And so now I need to write this so that we can plot it as negative 5, 0. So I'm going to plot those 2 points on my graph, and then we can finish our parabola. So I've got a negative 1, 0. Here's my y-axis, so negative 1, 0 is there. And I have a negative 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the last thing to do is connect the points. This is my vertex. And that's what my parabola is going to look like. It's a little more rounded here when we actually graph it, but for our purposes, that's fine. Let's look at number 2. The first thing that we do is we find our axis of symmetry, which is negative b. So I'm going to find my b. So it's negative 4. That's my b, is the number in front of x, divided by 2. So negative 4 divided by 2 is a negative 2. Now I'm going to take that negative 2, and I'm going to substitute it in for every x, so that I will have y is equal to a negative 2 squared, because I took this negative 2 and I substituted in for x, plus 4 times a negative 2 plus 3. So now I just need to solve for y. So negative 2 squared, negative 2 times a negative 2 is a positive 4. 4 times negative 2 is a negative 8 plus 3. 4 minus 8 is a negative 4 plus 3 is a negative 1. So I'm going to write my vertex, which is my negative 2 and my negative 1. And then I'm going to plot that at negative 2, negative 1. I know it's hard to find our x and our y-axis here, but here's our y. So negative 2, 1, 2, and negative 1. That's our vertex, either our highest or our lowest point. Let's find out if it's the highest or the lowest point. To determine the direction of the parabola, I'm going to look at the number in front of my x squared. Since that's positive, we know it's up. If it was negative, it would be down like a frown. Then we have to determine the y-intercept. So our y-intercept is always our constant, which is a positive 3. So I'm going to plot that at y equal to a positive 3. Here's my origin. So I go up 1, 2, 3, and that's my y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis. Now I'm going to rewrite my equation just so that we can see it. 1x squared plus 4x plus 3. You already have that written in front of you, but you can't see it on my paper. So it tells us to find the roots, which means that we have to factor. In order to do this, we don't currently have 4 terms, so we're going to multiply 1 times 3 is 3. Remember, 3 is a prime number, so our only possibilities are 1 and 3. So we're going to substitute 1x plus 3x instead of 4x. So I will have 1x squared plus 1x plus 3x plus 3. Now that that's 4 terms, it looks like something we can factor. So we are going to factor that. I'm going to put my x's above so that we can see them. One number can go into both 1 and 1. You should see that that's a 1. I have 1x that I can take out of both terms. So 1 divided by 1 is 1. I had 2 x's. I took 1 out, which means that I have 1 left. Plus 1 divided by 1 is 1. I had 1x. I took it out, so I'm done with that. Because of this plus, I'm going to add a plus. What number? The highest number can go into both 3 and 3. You should see that that's a 3. I have only 1x, so I start my parentheses. 3 divided by 3 is a 1. I had an x and I did not take it out. Plus 3 divided by 3 is 1. Now if we did this correctly, our parentheses should match. I have a 1x plus 1 and a 1x plus 1, which means they did match. So I'm going to write that parenthesis, 1x plus 1. This 1x plus 1 is being multiplied by a 1x. And this 1x plus 1 is being multiplied by a plus 3. Now we're not quite done. We have to set each of those equal to 0 because that's where it crosses the y-axis. Y is equal to 0. So I'm going to write 1x plus 1 is equal to 0 and 1x plus 3 is equal to 0. And then I have to solve for x. So in order to solve for x, I see that we're adding a 1 here. So I need to subtract a 1 on both sides. So I will have 1x is equal to a negative 1, 0 minus 1, or x is equal to a negative 1. And then I have to write that so that we can plot it as negative 1, 0, because that's what my y is equal to. It's equal to 0 when it crosses the y-axis, or x-axis, I'm sorry. Here, I have that we are adding 3, so I have to subtract 3. So I have 1x is equal to 0 minus 3 is a negative 3. I can write that as x equals negative 3. Remember, this 1 doesn't need to be there. It's an assumed 1. And then I need to write that as something I can plot. So it's going to be negative 3, comma, 0. So now I need to plot these 2 points on my graph. So I have a negative 1, comma, 0. I also have a negative 3, comma, 0. So now that I have my vertex, my y-intercept, and my roots, all I have to do is connect my dots. And that's what my parabola looks like. Our last example. It's always the same. We're going to first find our axis of symmetry. It tells us that it's negative b over 2. So I'm going to find my b, which is 6. So it's negative 6 divided by 2. Negative 6 divided by 2 is a negative 3. Then I'm going to take this negative 3 and I'm going to substitute it in. Every place there's an x. So I will have y is equal to a negative 3 squared, because I'm substituting this negative 3 in for x, plus 6 times negative 3 plus 8. Oops, I'm sorry. So all I've done is taken this negative 3 and substituted it in for x. Then I'm going to do the math. Negative 3 times negative 3 is a positive 9. 6 times a negative 3 is a negative 18 plus 8. So negative 9 minus 18 is a negative 9 plus 8 is a negative 1. We're going to write my vertex as negative 3, comma, negative 1. And then we're going to plot that point. So negative 3, 1, 2, 3. Remember, our x is always first. And our negative 1. That's either our highest or our lowest point. Let's find out which that is by finding the direction of the parabola. Remember, the direction of the parabola is the number in front of my x squared. If that's positive, it's up. If it's negative, it's down like a frown. So we know that our vertex is our lowest point. Let's find our y-intercept. Our y-intercept is 8. So we have a y equals 8. So we're going to graph that at positive 8. Here's my origin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is our y-intercept. The last thing that we have to do is find the roots of our parabola. I'm going to rewrite my parabola, 1x squared plus 6x plus 8. It's already on your page, but you can't see it here for our purposes. So that's why I rewrote it. So now we have to factor this. Let's factor. 1 times 8 is 8. So what are the factors of 8? The factors of 8 are 1 and 8, and 2 and 4. Then we are looking for the numbers that multiply to 8, but add to 6. So 1 plus 8 is equal to 9, and 2 plus 4 is equal to 6. So since we are looking for the one that multiplies or adds to 6, we're looking for the 2 and the 4. We're going to substitute that in so that I have 1x squared plus 2x plus 4x plus 8. Notice 2 plus 4 is equal to 6. We've just substituted this, 6x for 2x plus 4x. Now this looks like something we are able to factor. We're going to put parentheses around our first two terms and our second two terms. Just for ease of seeing how many variables we take out, I'm putting those above. So what number can go into 1 and 2? Well, only a 1. Then I look and see I have 1x that I can take out of both terms. Now that I've dealt with my number and my variable, I can start my parentheses. So 1 divided by 1 is 1. I had 2 x's, I took 1 out, so I have 1 left, plus 2 divided by 1 is a 2, plus, because of this plus, what's the highest number that can go into both 4 and 8? If we looked at our factor sheet, we would see that 4 is the highest number that can go into both numbers. Notice I only have 1x here, I don't have 1 here, so I can't take an x out. 4 divided by 4 is a 1. I had an x and I still have it. Plus 8 divided by 4 is 2. Now if we did it correctly, then I will have the same numbers inside my parentheses, which I do. I have a 1x plus 2. So we're going to write 1x plus 2. This 1x plus 2 is being multiplied by a 1x. And this 1x plus 2 is being multiplied by a 4. Now, we're not quite done. We have to set each of these equal to 0 because that's where it crosses our x-axis, is at y equal to 0. So I will have 1x plus 2 is equal to 0. I will also have 1x plus 4 is equal to 0. So now I need to solve for x. So 2 is being added, so I have to subtract 2 on both sides. So I will have 1x is equal to a negative 2. Or I can rewrite it as x is equal to a negative 2. Remember, these are the exact same things. And then I need to write it so that I can plot it. Negative 2, comma, 0. Negative 2 because of this, 0 because that's where it crosses my x-axis at y equal to 0. Now, let's look at this one. I'm adding 4, so I have to subtract 4 from both sides. So that I have 1x equals 0 minus 4 is a negative 4. Or I can rewrite it as x is equal to a negative 4. Now that I have the x is equal to a negative 4, my y is equal to 0, I can write it like that. Let's plot these 2 points on our graph, and then we'll just draw the graph and we're finished. So I have negative 2, comma 0. Here's my origin, so negative 2, 1, 2. I also have negative 4. Here's my origin, 1, 2, 3, 4. The last thing to do is to connect the dots. And our parabola is done. Let me know if you have any questions. I hope you have a great day.